Good afternoon, Maple. I hope that you had a lovely morning, and I hope that working from home as you are wasn't too much of a shock to the system for you. This afternoon, we are going to be having a look at art, and we are carrying on looking at our artist, who is Joseph Mallord William Turner. In a second, I'm going to share my screen. Art is one of those things that we would have been doing something quite different in school. So what I've done is I have had to slightly modify what our activity would have been. But depending on what you have access to at home, depends on what you can do. I'm going to show you what anybody can do at home, because it's what I had at home. But if you've got different things, I will explain to you how you can try and change what you're doing to try and add to that. Our art this week's going to be in two parts. So we're going to do a bit of it today, which is almost like a planning stage. And then later on in the week, you'll come back to it and you'll be able to apply this to some of Joseph Turner's work. So let's have a look at what we're doing. So to start off with, we'll look back through sort of our key information about Joseph Mallord William Turner. So pause the screen, have a look through his biography, have a look through the timeline of his life, and just remind yourself of some of the things that we talked about last week and we'll keep talking about at the start of each lesson. Now, the style of painting that Joseph Mallord William Turner used was sort of a couple of things. He was in the Romanticism period, but as well as that, he had some aspects of Impressionism. So on the slide at the moment, we've got a couple of bits of information about Romanticism and about Impressionism as well. So have a look, pause the slide again, read through it and see, can you remind yourself of the styles of paintings that we might be looking at? Okay, so last week we looked at one of his examples of paintings. We looked at the Dido building of Carthage, and we talked about how it made us feel, what we could see in it, what we could notice about it. And this week we're going to look at one from 1840, so 25 years after the one that we looked at last week. And this one is called the Slave Ship. So have a look at it, have a look at the colours, have a look at the different effects, and just pause it very quickly. How does it make you feel? What do you see? What stands out to you about this picture? Now, normally what we would do is we would all come up and we would all put a post-it note up around this picture so that we could share what we noticed about it. Just make sure that you email me your ideas as part of your artwork as well, so that I can see what you think of the picture. Part of looking at art is being able to look at it critically. So saying things that you like, saying things that you don't like, saying things that you notice as well. Um, so as well as that, have a look and compare the two pictures that we've looked at. What's the same? What's different about them? You might want to look at technique, you might want to look at style, you might want to look at the things that are in the pictures. But again, just pause the slides for me and have a look and compare them. What can you notice that's the same and what can you notice that's different? Okay, so we'll keep doing that at the start of each week because it's useful for us to have a look and to really get to know some of Turner's work. Um, let's have a recap of some of the vocabulary that we used last week as well. So we looked at shade, we looked at contrast, we looked at tint, we looked at the mood, we looked at perspective, and we looked at depth. And some of those words will be useful today as well. So pause the slide again, have a read through of the vocabulary that we used last week. And on the next slide, we've got some vocabulary that we might need for this week as well. So here is the vocab that we would have been using today in school. So reflection, showing a mirror image of something, which we did look at a little bit last week when we were trying to draw the mirror. Wash is where you brush painting with a thin coat of diluted paint or ink. Diluted means it's had water added to it, so it's often not as strong. Now, depending on what you have access to today will depend on whether that is relevant for you. Depth is the intensity of color. That's going to be appropriate for everybody. The background is the part of a picture that appears furthest from the viewer, and the foreground is the focal point of the picture. So the main part, the thing that the artist wants you to focus on. The texture is the tactile quality of a piece of art. So it's what it looks like it would feel like. Not necessarily what it does feel like, but how the artist has used shading, has used different effects to give the art that sort of 3D tactile quality. So today we are going to have a go at experimenting with texture. So lots of Turner's artwork involves the four elements, which are earth, fire, water, and air, which we can solve the sky. So let's have a look at how we can do that. So first of all, what different colors might be used for each element? Now, be specific with that. So make sure that you're talking about what shades of blue might be used for water, what shades of blue might be used for the sky, because we know there might be some similarities. With fire, have a think about what comes with fire as well. So we have smoke with fire, we've got the different levels of fire. So there would be red, there would be orange, there would be yellow. With earth, have a think about what different types of earth you can have. You can have mud, you can have grass, you can have sand. So you'll have all of those different colors being used there. With water, you will have different shades of blue. You might have tinges of green. And with air or the sky, think about the types of blue that you would have and think about how clouds might be represented. You might need grey, you might need white. So when we are coming to draw our pictures later on in the week, have a think about which different colours you will need to use. So what you're going to do today is you're going to have a go at using different shading effects to see how you can represent different texture. And on the screen at the moment is an example of how it will end up looking. On the next slide, I've got some different examples of sketching, but let me just explain to you what we would have done if we'd been in class, because it is slightly different. Now, today we would have been working with paint in class. Unfortunately, I don't know whether all of you will have access to paint, so I've made it so that it's a pencil job. But if you do have access to paint, by all means, please have a go at this with paint. Now, what we were going to do is we were going to explore how we can affect the texture of paint by adding different things to it, by adding water to it to see if we could get that wash, by adding PVA glue to it to see if we could get that shine on it, by adding sand to it to make it appear more earth-like, by adding sawdust to it to add that different aspect. So we've had to modify it quite a lot, but hopefully with the texture, with the sketching techniques that are on the next slide, you'll be able to explore and see which one works the best. Now, if you've got access to lots of different colors, you can try all of these shading techniques with each color and decide which ones would be most effective for what. I'm going to show you what I did, and I'll explain to you what I would have used each one for. So here we've got 9 different shading techniques. Now, I'm not much of an artist, but I was able to practice with all of these. So hopefully everybody should be able to do the same. I would recommend not using pen, because especially with light shading and dark shading, there's much less of a noticeable difference. So we've got crosshatch style, which is where you've got straight lines going in either direction. We've got squiggles, which looks a bit messy there, but it can be quite effective for showing things such as smoke. We've got dotting, where the closer together the dots are, the darker something appears. So it can be quite useful for shadow, for example. Now, light shading and dark shading can be quite useful when we're thinking about the background and the foreground. So the sky probably won't be a huge part of our drawing, but it has to be there. So light shading with whatever color we're using would be a really effective way of doing that. Dark shading can be used for things further in the foreground, and we are able to show that things are darker with that as well. Hatching is lots of straight lines just in one direction. Again, that can be quite useful for smoke. It can be quite useful for doing a different pattern with wood, for example. Zigzagging and threes are that way of adding different textures to it. Threes are quite useful in the sky. I would say if we had colored paper, threes for clouds would be really good. Zigzagging for things such as grass can be really, really effective in different shades of green. And then contours can be used to make something seem like it's further away than it is. So what you guys are going to have a go at is trying out all of these different shading techniques. If you have different colors, trying it with all of those different colors and deciding what you might use them for. So would you use crosshatch for the sky? Would you use squiggles for water? Would you use dark shading for a ship? Would you use zigzagging for grass? And just write a quick sentence for me. For fire, I will use what? Because, and give me a reason why. Tell me what colors you would use and what techniques you would use. It might be that you would use more than one technique. You might use dark shading for some aspects of the fire, light shading for some aspects of the fire, squiggles for the smoke. So tell me about all of those and why you would use it for each of those 4 elements. If you don't have colors, that's absolutely fine. We can still use these textures to create that black and white picture, including all of the elements. So you can still try that. Later on in the week, we're going to be applying all of this to draw our own version of the slave ship, using different sketching and different shading to add texture to our pictures. So have a go with it. If you're not sure about anything, as always, then drop me an email and I can try and help out. Take a picture of anything that you do so that I can have a look at it as well. And make sure that you really justify your reasons. So why would you use that for this? Why would you use cross-hatching for land? Why would you use the 3s for the sky? But good luck with it. And remember, we're going to be using this later on in the week. So have fun with it. If you've got paints, then by all means have a go at seeing if you can add things to it, and use whatever examples you guys have at home. Good luck with it and enjoy. Bye.